Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing, the notion of the sort of non-lockdown. We've done videos on this contemporaneously with this one, where we've talked about, the government has made it clear they've been, it's sort of one of those "methinks the lady doth protest too much" from the Shakespeare play, where the government has come out and said this is not a lockdown, notwithstanding the fact there are substantial restrictions being imposed on businesses and individuals and schools, as well as other institutions here in Thailand. But they want to be clear, it's not a lockdown. I'm not making this video and some of the videos that I made contemporaneously with it to criticize for criticism's sake. That's not the purpose of these videos. I have no doubt that everybody involved in the response to COVID-19, policymakers, etc., they're acting in good faith. They're trying their best. They're reacting to this as best they can. At this point, my thesis on this whole thing would be, there's a certain point where a thing just is what it is. We're going to have to learn to live with it. And, getting overreactionary and just shutting everything down every time, the news does not go to the liking of policymakers, in my opinion, that's not a very good way to do things, long story short. And also, I really don't think that folks, especially in a governmental capacity, fully appreciate the damage that some of these policies are doing and are having upon, especially the SME environment here in Thailand. And I do not say this lightly, but coming off this most recent iteration of these restrictions, or I should say going into the heavier part of these restrictions, in these coming days, with an eye toward coming out of it. I don't say this lightly, but this could decimate the SME economy, at least here in Bangkok. And I've been to Pattaya recently, Jomtien, Hua Hin, those places as well. I just don't think folks at a policy level are really appreciating just how substantial the impact that this has on businesses. And anybody that's ever set up a business, tried to scale a business, open their own business, run their own business, maintain their own business, can tell folks that have never done this before that it's tough, it's difficult, and moreover, maintaining that business's operation can be a real precarious thing, even at the best of times. Maintaining cash flow can be difficult. So when restrictions are just sort of imposed out of the blue, and they're of a nature that entirely truncates one's ability to really operate to the point of being totally impossible, and then for the policymakers that implement those rules to sort of have the presumption that, after just a few weeks or a few months, that business can just pop back up, sort of up out of the dust. That's not the way that things work. And just walking around in recent weeks, especially since this most recent set of restrictions has been sort of brought online, I don't know how long it's going to take for some of these storefronts to get open back up. It's just hard to say. The purpose of this video, though, is, again, going back to what I said at the beginning, the government seems to have gone out of its way to say that this is not a lockdown and that there are no curfews, notwithstanding the fact that, as a practical matter, there are substantial restrictions associated with this recent round of restrictions. In a recent article from Thai Visa, that's thaivisa.com, and I think this article brings this into sharp focus, and I really kind of want to tip the hat to the folks over there at Thai Visa. This is a really good article, and I know they're also commenting and translating from the Daily News, which is all in Thai, but I really thought that they, again, brought this into focus. Article is titled, and this is thaivisa.com, "When is a curfew not a curfew? Business chief slams latest COVID-19 measures." Quoting directly, Thailand's government has been blustering for days that they will not announce a nationwide lockdown and curfew, but Daily News reported that it's immaterial. They base their assessment, patently obvious to anyone who lives in Thailand, on comments from the chief of the Federation of Thai Industries, Supon Mongkon Suti. He said yesterday that the government don't need to issue a lockdown or curfew order. The people are locked down and under curfew already. And as I said a moment ago, yeah, as a practical matter, you know, you're seeing that. I mean, that's just the practical effect of these policies. Quoting further, people are scared to go out far more than in other waves of the virus. And with bars shut and malls and restaurants closing early, there is nothing for them to do at night anyway. Quoting further, whatever the government says, it is hard to get away from one inescapable conclusion, notes Thai Visa. Thailand is in a state of lockdown and under curfew at night in all but name. And I think that's you know, a pretty fair assessment. We're under lockdown and curfew in all but name. It's like, yeah, you can go out and, you know, wander the streets, but you know, everything's closed. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go, and there's nothing to interact with. So, and again, this video is being made, again, this is not meant to point fingers or to, you know, impose negative criticism on anyone. That's not the purpose of this. I simply think at this point we're a year on with this whole, you know, COVID response. And I think people have a tendency to get kind of boxed in their thinking, just as people are people. This is what they do. They get kind of blinders on with respect to their thinking. And, you know, rather than sort of reassess the situation, you know, they can have a tendency to just keep doing the same thing over and over. And, you know, and even if it doesn't really have any substantially positive impact. Meanwhile, that said, those actions have consequences. And I really can't stress this enough, just from my own observation in very intimate ways with clients who are having real problems with their business, as well as just observing businesses from the outside as a customer, as a potential customer, or as just someone walking the streets of Bangkok and some other cities here in Thailand. You know, this does have substantial negative ramifications. Ramifications that might reverberate for years to come if we do not try at least to make some balanced policy decisions, keeping in mind the economic impact that these decisions have, and at the same time, again, trying to keep everybody as safe as possible, while at the same time trying to understand that destroying the economy, or even I'm not saying anyone's purposely doing it, but even inadvertently, you know, crippling the economy can have far worse ramifications than maybe the effects of COVID itself. Could have far worse ramifications down the road and in the longer term.